last summer I bought a shirt from Banana Republic at that mall, and I know that this isn't the mall's fault, but I have never figured out how to properly take care of that shirt. I got like 3 good wears out of it before I had to wash it, and since then, like, I'm gonna bring a Banana Republic shirt to a dry cleaner and be like, hello? Can you straighten this out for me, please? I'd like to fit in it again. And Summer Grant is here, like I can. But all the fabric, and you can see it. It doesn't look good.
Oh, no.
I put it on once, and I'm like, this is a dish towel. Well, that's the podcast, folks. That's how I'm kidding.
Goodbye.
That's a good amount of absolutely useless content.
Information, yeah.
The good news is we actually already have the objective out of the way.
Yeah.
Because, well, we've both already laughed at this point.
That's true. Anyway, welcome to our podcast, Well, I Laughed. This is Grant. Actually... Sorry, this is Summer Grant now. This is a new person. I don't know if you've met him. Freshly shaved, big house shirt.
Big house shirt.
Downton Abbey incoming.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Although also recently I've been feeling the inclination to watch BoJack Horseman. So I don't know what I'm balancing right now, but we're going to be kind of in a weird mood the next 2 weeks.
BoJack Horseman never puts anyone in a good place.
Listen, here's the thing. I watch it for Princess Caroline, though, but yeah. I also watch Downton Abbey for Edith. And there's like 3 people in the world who get that reference, and I hope they're listening. Anyways, that's Maia Warner, and tonight's storyteller as we kick off a brand new theme, which we're super excited about.
Which is the Industrial Revolution and its consequences.
I want to be like, and its consequences. We can get it in post. We can get it in post.
The 5-day work week.
Exactly.
40 hours a week.
So we're going to learn about the Industrial Revolution and its consequences.
Mostly the consequences.
And let me tell you, folks, when I was asking what the story is about, Maia, ride or die, was like, no spoilers. And I was like, is it past or present? And she then told me, and then I forgot. So I'm going to be once again very surprised by what I'm about to hear, and I'm excited about it.
Yep. So in structuring these notes, I don't know when you're going to catch on to what the story is, because you have a lot more historical knowledge than I do at any point.
Oh, is that my degree in history education? If it's the Titanic, I'm pegging it in the first sentence. I want you to know right now.
It's not the Titanic.
It's classic head fake, but okay.
Okay, so I titled this story, A Short Fuse or a Really, Really Long Fuse?
Ooh.
Question mark.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna set the scene for the first little bit. The year is 1978.
Okay.
It is May 25th.
Okay.
Which is actually tomorrow.
Is it?
Yeah, today's the 24th.
Oh, that's good to
Spoilers.
know. Sweet.
Summer Grant does not know what day it is.
I'm pretty sure it's Wednesday, if that is for anything.
You did good.
Cool.
Okay. The year is 1978. It is May 25th. We're on the campus of the University of Illinois at Chicago.
Love it.
Great. A person comes across a package in a parking lot. There.
Go ahead.
He begged it.
Well, maybe. I don't know. Go ahead.
Okay. He comes across a package in a parking lot. He notices it looks like a regular package. It has stamps on it. It has a return address and a send to address. The return address is the professor of material engineering at Northwestern University, which is about 40 minutes north of Chicago.
And we need to say not in Chicago. I do think Chicagoans care about that distinction.
Yeah, sorry. It's
in Evanston.
Near Chicago. 40 minutes, I think, north of University of Illinois at Chicago. The professor's name is Buckley Christ Jr., and the package is addressed to E.J. Smith, who is a professor at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York. So if you're doing the math here, this guy is seeing this package, and he's like, well, the return address is not that far, so I'm going to return it.
Why? Already, listen, it's the 1970s, so I know it's a different generation, okay? Part of me is like, he didn't steal it. Yeah. But part of me is like, worse, he's like involved himself, you know?
I would steal it. That's my package now.
We had a conversation a couple months ago about whether or not I was the asshole for opening my door, being like, no thank you, and then closing the door.
Yeah.
Could not imagine being like, I will deliver this package. Best case scenario, I'm putting it in like a blue UPS mailbox. If it's right in front of me.
Exactly.
Otherwise, hope no one hits it.
No.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah, this person is a much better person than I ever will be.
Well, it depends on what's in the box.
Exactly. So the package was returned to Christ at Northwestern University, who receives it the next day. Christ gets the package, does not recognize the package as something he's sent. And so he calls campus security, as one does. And Officer Terry Marker opens the package, and it explodes.
Right.
Yep. Causing minor cuts and burns.
Oh. No, that's good.
Yeah.
Yes.
No one died.
Cool.
No one died. Just minor
cuts and burns?
Minor cuts and burns.
So it's like a firecracker that's in there?
Amazing. Like, yeah. A big firecracker.
We had a neighborhood kid get really burned by a smoke bomb once on the 4th of July.
Yeah, minor cuts and burns.
Okay.
So, that's cool. Nearly a year later, it is now May 9th, 1979. We're back on the Northwestern campus.
Okay.
John G. Harris, he's a graduate student in the civil engineering department, is walking through the technical building, and he comes across a box of Phillies brand cigars, which have been left on a table. So, of course, he opens the box. That's
Finally,
me.
a normal person
that's me.
in this story.
He opens the box, and it explodes, causing cuts and burns. Again, no serious injuries.
So minor cuts and burns.
Minor cuts and burns.
I keep waiting for someone to lose a finger.
Yeah, it's coming.
So Northwestern has had 2 explosions.
In a year.
Well, obviously
basically.
the solution is for everyone to have a small explosive device. That's the only way you're going to stop these explosions. Right? That's what we understand?
No, I get it.
Okay,
I get it.
cool.
Yeah, more explosives is the solution to explosives.
Right, 100%.
Yeah, that way you can protect yourself from the explosives.
And what's so cool about this? 0 parallels.
Okay. Now, later this same year, 1979, on November 15th, there is a package that has been shipped, and it gets put on American Airlines Boeing 727 Flight 444.
Now we're talking.
Yeah, en route to Washington, D.C. from Chicago. When the plane hits 34,500 feet, non-lethal smoke fills the cabin, and the plane emergency lands at the Dulles Airport, which is near D.C., so they got minorly inconvenienced.
I don't know, have you been to the Dulles Airport? That's like a huge inconvenience.
Actually, yeah, the Dulles Airport is not cute. So there are no fatalities. 12 passengers are treated on the scene for smoke inhalation.
Sure.
And the baggage compartment is damaged by the fire resulting from the explosion. Again, no fatalities, like some damage to a plane. The next year, June 9th, 1980, Percy Wood, which is the United Airlines president, is sifting through his mail in his home in Lake Forest, California. He receives a letter from an Enoch W. Fisher telling him that...
The name's in the story, by the way. James G. Harding, or whatever it was.
Crazy.
That's a president.
It's a president!
All of them have middle initials. I also think that's
why.
I think it's a 70s, 80s things too,
Maybe,
you know?
Yeah, I don't understand.
Listen, if we're going to do 2 things in the 70s and 80s, it's spell our names with our middle initial and
speed.
regulate assault weapons. And speed. No, see, y'all, that was my bad. I was going for the reoccurring motif.
Silence!
Good, okay.
I'm not well. Okay. So he receives a letter from Enoch W. Fisher telling Wood that Fisher would be sending a book of great importance to all business executives and like highly recommending that he reads it.
Okay.
Does Wood know Fisher? No. But of course Wood is the good executive, and so he's gonna read the book.
Oh. See, okay, I'm sorry. I know I just interrupted. This is the same
That's
sentence.
fine.
It's super easy to guess CEO emails. Because here's the thing. All organizations have emailing conventions, right? At my workplace, it's first initial, full last name, okay? So all you need to do is find the HR department, see what her email is, or his.
Yeah.
And then you're good. Just feel free to let M&M, the Mars company, know anything that's on your mind. Because apparently they'll read it. Like, you know it's his email is emusk@twitter.com.
I just had a great idea.
And that's how we go viral, folks.
Did you see that DeSantis just like is announcing his presidency today?
Did you see
And
that
it's not
it kept
working?
crashing?
Yeah.
But he keeps getting demoted to listener at his own launch party. You know, you see
so
Veep
funny.
and you're like, nothing's ever going to be this funny. And then Ron DeSantis runs for president and you're like, give it up.
Give it up, buddy. Give it up. Okay, to be fair, this was not an email. This was like a physical letter. But he still opened it.
Because somebody says not email. Yeah, I get it.
Okay. I just want to make sure you knew. Anyway, the next day he receives a package and he opens it. It's a book called The Ice Brothers by Sloan Wilson, which I was like, maybe this is like a book of great importance. As
Is
you
it?
said.
It sounds like a porn.
It's a book about 2 new members of the U.S. Coast Guard who are forced to take command of a trawler in the Greenland Arctic seas after the actual captain had, like, what seems to be a mental breakdown.
All bosses love to read stuff like this. They're like, and then they like really believed in themselves in a situation where they would die if not. And their takeaway is always that like humans are capable of great things, not that like trauma will force people to do insane shit, you know?
True, like-
They're always like, if I terrorize my employees like the North Sea will increase productivity by 3%. And like the real takeaway is usually like you'll have high burnout and then a unionization effort.
We stand unions.
I feel a little bit more political today than usual. It might be because it's finally sunny out
And
again.
I love it. Let's go picket something. Okay, so Wood opens the book, and as you might have guessed, it's a hollowed out book, and it detonates, and it causes serious cuts to his face.
I was actually not guessing that. I'd actually gotten so deep in
in
my
the book?
CEO riff that I was like, oh, right, bombs.
Okay, so upon inspection of the remnants of the bomb, there are the initials FC stamped into the bomb.
Okay.
Do you know what the story is now?
Potentially. Do we trace our way back to Utah at some point?
Yes, there are some in Utah.
Okay.
No.
Feeling pretty good right now.
Okay, so at this point, if you're keeping tabs, there's been 4 bombs, right, over the span of 2 years.
2 in Chicago, 1 in DC, 1 in California.
Yes.
Dope.
Yep. So the local postal inspectors report all the incidents to the FBI. Of course, the FBI already knows because there was one on a plane. So at this point, the FBI has concluded that they have a serial bomber. So the FBI opens a case file and they named it according to their 6-letter naming convention. Do you know what the 6-letter naming?
E. Musk at Cliff. No, what is it? Is it Unabomber?
Yeah!
Hey!
It is the Unabomber. So
Nice.
they name it according to their 6-letter naming convention. The first 3 letters were UNA. And there's some discrepancy here. There's a couple sources that said the UNA was for United Airlines because they've targeted the president of the United Airlines. But the flight that the bomb was on was American Airlines, so I don't know.
I think it's interesting because I always pronounced it Unabomber, and I just think like English is such an elastic language.
Summer Grant?
Unabomber.
Unabomber.
Like unibrow. Interesting, right?
And then, but a lot of other sources agree that the Unabomber is short for University and Airline Bomber. And then BOM, short for
Boy,
bomb.
that really rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? University and airline
I don't know if it's like,
bomber.
I don't know if it's like UN University, like both from university, or if it's University.
You know the deputy FBI director is like a Northwestern alum, like go Wildcats, and it's like, this is not the Northwestern bomber, okay? This is the university, nameless, and airline bomber.
That's so true at this point. It's just Northwestern. Oh, wah, wah.
Like the Northwest bomber sounds really interesting to me.
Yeah.
Unabomber is a good name too. I mean,
but
they're not taking
it's not
suggestions.
the same.
So.
Yeah, they're not. So the FBI connected the incidents together as one suspect because they had sort of inspected the remnants of the bombs and they were
The guy
all
gave his initials.
on the last one.
Right.
Yeah, but all of them were very like crudely built. I think the first one was literally made with matchsticks where the like head of the match had been like meticulously cut off of like hundreds of matches, and minor cuts and burns, kids.
Sure.
Like, that's why, guys. But,
you know what I'm shocked by? That Nancy Reagan didn't use the cigar box as another warning to not do drugs, you know?
She missed an opportunity.
She did.
No one died. Like, she could have used
minor
it.
cuts and burns.
Minor cuts and burns.
And worst of all, probably ruined the cigars. Okay, so the FBI has an idea that it's one guy, and that these bombings are connected.
They form a, quote, loosely formed joint task force between the FBI and the Postal Inspection Service.
Group project vibes. Group project vibes.
Like,
I love that.
Honestly, you're gonna sit in a room with Postal Service workers and the FBI.
I do imagine one shows up in a suit and the other one has those, like, honestly, like, kind of flattering, like, light blue button-ups, you know?
I love it. I love it. Okay, so all of this happens a year later, October 8th, 1981. A maintenance worker at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City sees a large package outside of the university computer mainframe room. It's the 80s. And, the package has a return address of BYU, Brigham Young University, an electrical engineering professor there named Leroy Wood Burnson. Berenson? I'm not sure.
I think it's Burnson. Burnson.
Hey.
Burnson. I'm sorry, we don't have to use that.
The package was reportedly there for a long time, so the student calls campus security, who suspected it was a bomb.
Nice.
And called in the bomb squad to defuse it. So this is the first bomb to be defused, and this one is also found to have the letters FC stamped into it.
Okay.
May 5th, 1982, so a little less than a year later, a package is mailed to Professor Patrick C. Fisher at Penn State. The issue being Patrick C. Fisher no longer works at Penn State. So the package was forwarded.
Is this the bomb that went from Utah to BYU to Penn State, or they took care of the Utah bomb and now we're in Penn State?
They took care of the Utah bomb. This is a different one. This package was then forwarded to Vanderbilt, where he had been working now for 2 years. So the Unabomber didn't have a shit together, apparently. Fisher was vacationing in Puerto Rico at the time that the package arrived. So his secretary, Janet Smith, opened it and received serious injuries to her face and arms.
Janet.
I know. It had to be a woman, too. The
and
package,
now America cares.
No. The package also had a return address of Leroy Burnson of BYU, who is a real person, and both times he had he did not know about these packages.
I did not know the Unabomber hated higher education so much.
Who
is he, Ron DeSantis?
Hey! So the package had utilized canceled stamps for the first time, theoretically to ensure that it got returned to sender when it did not. And there's a metal tag inside the bomb containing the letters FC. At this point, the authorities have no suspects. Not even a single lead.
But what did the post office have?
You know what? They knew. They had it figured out from the start.
It has to be kind of tough to be in that half of the group project because you are the ones delivering these packages.
Yeah.
We're going to catch them, guys. We promise. We just move like a lot of inventory.
And so they had expected the bomber to make a mistake at this point, leave a fingerprint on like the sticky side of the stamp or the like actual stamp or a hair somewhere in the contraption, and none of what was left over of the bombs or the diffused bombs gave up any clues. Even the materials themselves weren't helpful because they were all seemingly very random, like they didn't give any hints to where the bombs might have come from. So not long after that Patrick C. Fisher bomb, on July 2nd, 1982, I genuinely do not know how to pronounce that name. I heard it pronounced on the documentary, but I could not tell you.
I would guess Diogenes?
Diogenes J. Angelikos?
Our next victim.
He's an engineering professor at UC Berkeley. Sees what looks to be some engineering equipment on the floor of the faculty lounge. I believe the name of the...
How the hell is he getting into these places?
I don't know. You'll find out, actually. You'll find
okay.
out. Upon lifting the handle... I didn't for a second. Listen, towards the end of writing these notes, my brain was like, what? So anyway, Diogenes sees some engineering equipment on the floor of the faculty lounge in what I believe was Corey Hall. If I don't have it written down, but I think that's what it was called. Upon lifting the handle, it explodes and causes him serious injuries to his arms, face, and hands. Inside of the bomb, a note was found saying, Woo, it works. I told you it would. Like from RV. And so the FBI are like, that's a hint. That's a dead hint. So they're looking at people named Woo. They're looking at people. They're looking at people.
They're also looking at Professor Woo because that's who they thought it was addressed to.
Exactly.
Woo. It works.
Yeah, Woo, it works. They're trying to find anyone named Woo that maybe has a friend with the initials RV.
To be a hater of this level during the early 80s is so tough because you're getting, like, no video, no audio, like, no content you can use or share.
Yeah.
You're just, like, reading about it in the news one day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy. So that was a complete dead end. They never found anything, and I wonder if that's for
also,
a reason.
have the initials now changed too? I thought it was like FV or
it's FC. This is a totally different thing. I think FC might have still been in the bomb. Actually, I don't know, but whatever.
So we have a couple initials floating around and a couple bombs floating around. Yeah. Okay.
So at this point, the bomber has not caused any fatalities, but slowly he was creating more efficient explosives, which is what was scaring the FBI because they were realizing that whoever this was getting better at what they were doing. After this, there was nearly a 3-year period where nothing happened. So the FBI was thinking maybe this guy was a criminal and he got caught for something else. Maybe he died.
The FBI took the same approach to the Unabomber that I took to my health my entire 20s. If I don't tell anyone about it or seek any help at all, it will go away.
Yeah, no one will know.
Listen, I went to a doctor day before I turned 30. He called me young and healthy. In that order, too.
You've said that in every podcast since it happened to you.
People will eventually learn
Catch on. Grant is young and healthy.
My students go, you're what, Mr. Like 30? And I go, I am 30.
That was my favorite game to play when I was a summer camp counselor, was like, how old do you think we, like, because it was a wide range of people. Like, it was people that were teachers, and then it was like people like me who were in high school, right? And so they were like, we think you're like 52.
You're so mean.
I was like,
do you know what a 52-year-old is doing at that time?
Yeah. I was like, huh? Okay. So, after the 3-year sabbatical, May 15th, 1985.
I love that you call it a sabbatical, like he was also in Puerto Rico.
I don't know why I called it a sabbatical. I think someone must have said sabbatical, and then I just kept repeating it.
Sabbatical, yeah.
Sabbatical, yeah, it was a sabbatical.
After taking some paid time off from bombing professors, he came back to it. Came back.
John Hauser, a grad student and captain of the U.S. Air Force, lost 4 fingers and vision in 1 eye. Ooh. Yeah, the bomb followed a 3-year break, utilized a new explosive compound, which was ammonia nitrate and aluminum powder. So now the FBI is really starting to freak out because it's getting more effective and it's starting to cause more harm.
Right.
And then,
it's still a bomb.
And it's still a bomb. Yeah, they can't be like, oh no, minor cuts and burns.
What is this, experimental poetry? Yeah. No, not that. It's like still explosives.
Yeah, it's still explosives. So almost all of the bombs following this one have the initials FC stamped into it. I'm going to stop mentioning that because it gets repetitive. So he lost 4 fingers, and in the documentary, they showed that he like wore like a big class ring, what looks like, on one hand. And when he lost those fingers, the ring went flying, and it actually made a perfect like replica of the ring in the wall because it hit the wall with such force.
The way I did not need to know that.
You're welcome. Listen, if you haven't caught on yet, I like true crime. So
yeah, because every time I tell a story, I'm like, here's a funny thing some colorful characters did, and you're like, and he lived in the woods for 30 years.
Listen, I'm not sad about it. Anyway, next month, June 13th, 1985. So this is like, now we're picking up the pace.
Sure.
Now the FBI is really freaking out. A bomb is set to Boeing in Auburn, Washington. It's defused by the bomb squad because you sent it to an engineering firm, like an actual engineering firm.
Okay, he also sent it to several universities who did fully open it.
Have you been to universities?
You know I have.
They're not particular. Also, you can't stop a grad student from opening a package.
That's so true.
Yeah.
That's so true.
I don't know. Boeing seems like maybe more secure. I don't know.
Also, like, while all departments are, like, certainly equal, at my university, go Cornhuskers, the College of Business Administration had, like, a brand new spaceship of a building, and the College of Education still had yellow paint and chalkboards and was mainly subterranean.
They needed you to learn.
I can tell you what building was not getting bombs delivered to.
The education building.
Anyways, all I was going to say.
Okay, November 15th, the same year, 1985, James V. McConnell and Nicholas Sweeney were a psychology professor and assistant, respectively, at the University of Michigan, were both severely injured after opening a bomb addressed to McConnell. Unfortunately, the assistant is the one that opened it, and so he's the one that received most of the injury.
Because so far the people getting maimed in all these bombs are like the secretaries and grad assistants and people who don't think trash belongs on the floor. The best of us are the ones that are suffering the consequences.
Damn it! So the bomb appeared to be a 3-ring binder, and it included a letter, like on top of it, asking the professor to review a student's master thesis, which is why it was opened so efficiently. The same year, December 11th, 1985, so if you're counting, that is 4 bombs now in 1985, there is a nail and splinter bomb that is left in a parking lot in Sacramento, California. The store of the parking lot belongs to a man named Hugh Scruton, and Hugh Scruton does die, unfortunately.
Oh.
This is our first fatality. And upon further investigation, Hugh was a student at Berkeley like 20 or so years ago, and so they're trying to make connections.
Sure, trying to figure it out.
And that was a connection because there's been several targetings of it's University of Michigan, Northwestern.
Right.
What is it?
Some of
University
our nation's
of Berkeley.
most expensive schools.
Yeah, so February 20th, 1987, so 2 years-ish later, a bomb was disguised as a piece of lumber.
Wait, so he does 4 in 1 year and then takes another sabbatical?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, why? I don't understand.
Interesting. Do you think it really was like a side hobby for him?
Oh, we'll get into it.
Okay.
Oh, it's a whole thing. So, February 20th, 1987, there was a bomb that was disguised as a piece of lumber, and it was again in a parking lot, and the owner of the store, I don't know how to word that. The parking lot of the store... There was a bomb disguised as a piece of lumber in the parking lot of the store.
He's even better at like hiding them as just everyday objects.
Exactly.
Too.
And so Gary Wright and his son tried to remove it from their store parking lot. This was in Salt Lake City. The explosion severed nerves in Wright's left arm and sent over 200 pieces of shrapnel into his body.
Ugh.
The thing that makes this bombing unique is that a suspect was spotted.
Love it.
I know. He was spotted while planting the Salt Lake City bomb, and it led to a sketch of the suspect being released. And I don't know if you've ever seen a sketch released by the police. It does look like the person after you see the person.
Oh, sure. You're like, if we backload this.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot like Tinder profiles versus person you meet on your first Tinder date. You're like, that photo does look like you, which is not to say you look like the photo.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you ever look up the Unabomber portrait, it's a sketch of a man wearing a hoodie, aviator sunglasses.
So he's hot.
And like a beard, I think. And it's like very nondescript. It's a white man.
And that was UNA?
UNA. UNA bomber. Like FBI sketch.
Oh, yeah, it's like the third option. Oh, wow. It kind of looks like Michael Jackson.
It does a little bit.
Rest in peace. Yeah. But like...
It was described as reddish blonde hair, which is important later.
Oh, okay. The curls aren't as cool then.
Okay, so...
I need to get off these sketches.
Following this 1987 bomb, there's a 6-year-long break where nothing happens.
Okay.
And I will again remind you, the FBI continued to have not a single idea of where
what's going on,
as to who the bomber is, where the bomber might be, like anything.
I think it's clear that the post office was closer to solving this because he started to hand deliver them.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, from this point on, it's all through the mail. He never hand delivers anything again, so it's all through the mail. He learned his lesson, unfortunately, after he got spotted.
He got sketched out.
Hey.
Told you he'd get back to the Titanic. I never grew out of that phase.
I hate it here. Okay, so we're going to run through these next points. 6-year-long sabbatical. FBI I think at this point, if I were the FBI, we're probably hoping that he was a criminal of something else and got put in jail, and so that way they wouldn't have to deal with him anymore.
Sure.
But they also kept having to answer to the press about why they had no idea what was happening. So, June 22nd of 1993, there's a bomb mailed to Charles Epstein, and it's, as far as I know, no relation to the Epstein or... Anyway, he's a geneticist at the University of California. So
I'm also 2 months old now in this story.
Yeah, very different from the Epstein that everyone thinks of when you say Epstein.
Sure.
He's a geneticist. The return address is University of California, San Francisco. Epstein opens the box. He's suffered a broken arm, abdominal trauma, and he also lost several fingers. That same weekend, June 25th, 1993, a bomb is mailed to David Gellertner. Can't pronounce anything. Who is a comp sci professor at Yale. This man lost one eye, hearing in one ear, and a portion of his right hand.
First Ivy League target, though.
Yeah, that's true. June 25th, 1993, so this is the same day as that most recent one that I just mentioned. Warren Hodge, an editor at the New York Times, receives a letter from the anarchist group FC. The FBI deduced that this was not a group, but an individual.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Despite the letter saying, we are an anarchist group. Because this is their reasoning, deadass, from the FBI. I got this from the FBI website interviewing FBI investigators.
So
There's no way a group could stay this tight-lipped over so many years with no mistakes.
Here's the thing. Thank you for finally launching into an area that I'm like truly an expert in. Okay. So as a person who taught for years world history before I moved to the elective that I teach, there was always come a moment where like I'd have a boy in my class who'd been on the internet for too long, and I'd have to like basically talk them out of conspiracy theories. In fact, one year, my second year teaching on the anniversary of 9/11, a teacher was gone, and the sub, instead of doing the sub plan, just went onto YouTube and played the first 9/11 documentary that they found.
No.
Listen, I'm 24 years old, like second year teaching, which means I've only been doing it for like 10 months. And I'm like, jet fuel can melt steel beams. Like, you guys don't understand what you're talking about right now. And one of the things I always come back to is like, you can't keep your own secrets about trivial nonsense. Okay? Do you understand as adults how much we are eager for other people to think we are important? No one is keeping secrets. Okay? Every time you tell a secret, a small friend group is informed. And an angel gets its wings. Like, I don't know what else to tell you.
No one can keep a secret, and that's how the FBI realized that the Unabomber was a single person.
I love it.
I love the base knowledge. Okay. December 19th, 1994, so over a year later, Thomas J. Mosser, who is an executive at a company called Young and Rubicam, which is a public relations company, was killed after opening a bomb sent to his New Jersey home.
No warning there.
I know, so that's the second fatality, if you're keeping track.
Yeah.
The FBI now comes to the conclusion that the targets were not targeted as a result of, like, some personal vendetta, because none of them have any relation to each other, and they cannot find anything. So they're assuming that they're being targeted kind of at random, but also they're being picked because the Unabomber is likely reading stuff about them.
Yeah, he can, like, find their address.
Yes, exactly, because they're famous enough and they're doing something that's making him mad, and that's how he's picking them. So, April 24th, 1995, so a little less than a year later, Gilbert
2 days after my second birthday. Just crazy when you hear stories and you're like, oh, I was, like, alive during that.
I wasn't.
This is ageism.
It is.
That's why I'm harder than she is. I was born into terrorism. I don't know what to tell you.
Shut up. So Gilbert Brent Murray, he's the president of a timber industry lobbying group in the California Forestry Association, is killed by a mail bomb addressed to the previous president, William Dennison, who had retired.
I mean, obviously I'm not pro-terrorism.
No. But
to attack a lumber company in the Pacific Northwest, America's last great rainforest.
Listen, I'm not agreeing with the Unabomber at any point. I am saying maybe he had some valid points.
Caleb Heron is this great comedian, and after the horrendous decision overturning Roe v. Wade, he came out with a little song.
Oh no.
Maybe it's time for political violence against my enemies. It agrees with me politically, or it gets the violence. Obviously, I don't endorse that. I'm just offering it up for discussion.
Listen, the Unabomber would have loved it. Would the Unabomber have found it? Probably not.
Also, on the ideology scoreboard, it's like a dozen college professors and one person who probably just like cut him off one day.
Okay. So, April 1995, so the same month that Gilbert Brent Murray, the president of the lobbying group, died, many letters were sent out from FC. One was to one of the most recent survivors, the I can't say his name. Gelernter. We're gonna go with that.
I'm not gonna get it any closer.
No. So one was sent to David Gelernter, the survivor of the 1993 bombing, and there's a quote from that letter that says, "There are a lot of people out there who resent bitterly the way techno nerds like you are changing the world, and you wouldn't have been dumb enough to open an unexpected package from an unknown source."
This man is using a national post service with like readily made access to like basically all of the bomb making supplies that he's won. And he's mad about modernity? He's mad about not you advancing us past the epoch, which was apparently 1977. Like the Amish, I get, you know? But that, you know what? You know what I miss? The months before Carter's first midterm. Like, what? What are you talking about?
And this poor man is a comp sci professor, so you know it's just like kind of introverted.
This man's teaching typewriter. This man's teaching word processing.
And he's getting called a techno nerd. And being condemned for opening an unexpected package. Can't handle it.
Like, obviously, terrorists don't have, like, a unified vision on the world.
No.
But when you get even just, like, a little appetizer of it, you're like, this is nuts.
It's crazy.
You could have killed Jeff Bezos.
And you chose to target a comp sci professor?
Also, is it a professor or is it a comp sci adjunct professor? Because we know the hollowing out of universities started well before the current age.
That's
you know?
true. That's very true. So another letter, same month, was sent to, or two separate letters were sent to Dr. Philip Sharp at MIT and Dr. Richard Roberts at New England Biolabs, and both were basically the same letter, and they both had a quote that said, "It would be beneficial to your health to stop your research in genetics."
So he's not even mad about, like, cell phones, or I guess at that point, like, the car phone?
He's mad about research into genetics.
He's mad about, like, genetic diseases?
Which must, like, this is how the
Stop
FBI...
your research into hemophilia or there will be consequences. What?
There's just, like looking at this story from the way that the FBI were, like, getting it and the news sources were getting it, I cannot really blame them for not understanding
what's going on. Okay, I also want to make sure it's clear we are not laughing that, like, people got bombed.
No.
It's the reason the man sent the bombs. Is hilarious.
Unhinged.
Do you know how long it takes me to get to the post office for things like my passport application?
Yeah, too long.
And this man's like, not you studying the science behind blue eyes. Stop now or your secretary gets it. That's who the victims were.
That's what happened. Oh, man. Okay, another letter gets sent to Warren Hodge at the New York Times with an explanation for the reason that some of his victims were chosen.
See, that's the real gig. If there's an insane serial killer out there, the job you want is biggest newspaper in town.
Yes.
Like, the Zodiac killer, love talking to the one out in San Francisco.
Really wanted to talk to news sources.
Absolutely. Here's the thing. I'm friends with several journalists now. It's not hard to talk to them. It's like, actually, they're incredible listeners.
Easy to talk to.
Exactly.
They just want a therapist without feeling like they're going to a therapist.
Correct. Go to the bar closest to their office that has a happy hour that goes a little bit later than the other ones. They're there.
You'll find them. You'll find them.
They're not paid well.
Oh my god. Okay. So Mosser, who was the executive at Young and Rubicam, was chosen because his company worked to repair the public image of Exxon after the Exxon Valdez oil spill.
Another great point.
I know, right? Like, I don't want to agree with the criminal, but...
Okay, so... fourth quarter comeback, kind of.
Yeah.
Got you going
So I did some research on the Exxon Valdez oil spill, if you don't know, like me. Occurred in okay, I know the name, I just don't know the details. God.
That's worse.
I'm not gonna remember every oil spill, guys. There's too many. And by too many, I mean like 5.
Were you alive when BP oil spill was a thing?
Cool, I remember that one
cool.
distinctly,
Okay, cool.
yeah. Occurred in March of 1989 when a supertanker bound for Long Island hit the William Sound Bligh Reef? I don't know. It hit a reef in the Prince William Sound. It spilled 10.8 million gallons of crude oil and affected 1,300 miles of coastline, and it's the second largest after the Deepwater Horizon spill in 2010.
Yeah.
So, big boy one. Biggest of the time at that point. Aside from Mosser, professors were selected due to their work in certain fields.
Okay.
It seems like it's a little out there.
It does.
I don't know. Professors, I don't think, are paid enough for that. But the author of the letter claims to be part of an anarchist group whose goal was to, quote, break down society into very small, completely autonomous units. And he bargains to stop terrorist activities if the New York Times publishes their manuscript. However, there's an important differentiation between terrorist activities and sabotage.
Right.
Apparently. This person, the author of the letter, defines terrorist activities as relating to people and, like, hurting people.
As a person who coaches debate, it's actually, like, really good to provide your own definition for some of these things. It's, like, actually a, like, classic opening argument move.
He knew what to do.
He knew what he was doing.
And sabotage relates to the destruction of property. And apparently they ended this bargain with, we reserve the right to engage with sabotage. So he's like,
it's like a legal contract.
Yeah, we'll stop killing people. Yeah, we'll stop trying to hurt people. But we cannot promise that we won't set fire to the New York Times.
I promise to stop sending bombs to complete strangers, but I do not promise to stop setting myself on fire. Okay, not to make like another education reference, but like I work with high schoolers, and it's so great because they oftentimes learn words before they learn the words.
Love that.
And so you're like, that's not how you use the word redundant. And who put that in front of you this week? Like, I had never heard you say the word before, and now you're wrong about it? Honestly, they're using it redundantly.
That was good.
I taught them the word stark once, and for the next 2 weeks I had to slash it out of everything they turned in. Because it'd be like, I had a stark day. Because they thought it meant like big or important. And it's like, yes, but no. And he's over here like, this legal contract that I typed up, which again feels like modernity. It feels like intro computer science stuff to me. He's like, oh, and by the way, I can still do sabotage.
But publish my manuscript. Pretty please.
In your nationally syndicated newspaper that requires loads of technology to get
And you
out.
just know this manuscript is not going to be short.
No.
Yeah, okay. So June 27th, 1995, that is the same year. Jerry Roberts, who is an editor at the San Francisco Examiner, gets a letter saying FC is planning on blowing up an airliner flying out of LA in the next 6 days. What do you do with that? That wasn't, there's no bargain. There's like, I'm going to do this if you don't publish my manuscript. It's just, we're going to do this.
So that falls under sabotage or terrorism?
He's only trying. It's not intent. He's only trying to blow up an airliner.
I warned you.
Just to give a little spoiler, that explosion never happened.
Right.
For no apparent reason.
Because we're chuckling about it right now.
Yeah, just so you know. So June 28th, a day later in 1995, Warren Hodge at the New York Times receives the 65-page manuscript.
Nice. Not short at all.
Longer than most newspapers.
People who want to write novels struggle to do that much sometimes.
Receives a 65-page manuscript from FC and their terms for the publication, which we'll get into in a second. On the same day, the Scientific American receives a letter from FC referencing an article that they published in 1993, so 2 years prior, on particle accelerators, and discusses the negative aspects of scientific advances on society.
It's taken me a while, but I've finally synthesized my thoughts on your 1993 thing about particle accelerators.
And I just wanted to let you know.
I strongly disagree. And if you want to know what my credentials are, I'll look in the New York Times in the next couple of days and know what I'm all about.
That's some power. That's some power. Okay, June 29th, 1995, a day later, Penthouse publisher Bob Guccione gets a response from FC because they had reached out to him, like, by publishing something, saying that they would publish his manuscript.
Absolute clout chasers from the start. It's not just her generation.
The response is hilarious. The author, FC, sends a response to Penthouse with the manuscript along with the publication terms.
Wait. How does Penthouse send FC?
I think they must have published something. I didn't look into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, do we have this guy's mailing address
No.
at this point? And the FBI is still like, I don't know, USPS, what should we do? Okay.
And Penthouse is like, let's just give him a call.
There are literally like three billboards outside of like Billings, Missouri, or whatever that movie is. They're like, Dear FC.
We'll publish for you. So FC sends the manuscript along with the same publication terms they had sent to the New York Times and the Washington Post. He also sent the same bargain to the Washington Post. The author sends the manuscript along with the publication terms, but also mentions that they would rather see the manuscript published in the New York Times or the Washington Post because they're respectable.
I, a bomber of innocence, would never degrade myself to Penthouse. But it's important that I spread the word, so if I have to.
So he adds that if Penthouse publishes it and the others don't, they will still adhere to the bargain, but they reserve the right to one more bomb.
Because it's already in the mail.
They're like, shit.
Here's the thing. Honestly flattered.
It's
just as long as like the next 7 days is like a forgive and forget kind of time period.
I don't That made me laugh so hard.
Listen, I will do it. Put one more bomb to kind of generate readership, right? We gotta get some page clicks on it, and I know exactly what we need to do to market this thing.
This is a lesson on knowing your worth, ladies and gentlemen.
It's about building hype. We could honestly be taking lessons from the Unabomber.
The Unabomber knew how to advertise and how to set his boundaries.
New York Times, if you interview us, we will stop making podcasts. However, we reserve the right for one more podcast. And whatever we think is sabotage.
For the rest of our lives in perpetuity. Like, what?
We're good at this.
We're good at this. Okay, so in this letter to Penthouse, he also reveals what FC stands for. What do you think FC
Football
stands
club.
for? So on the documentary, I didn't write all of them down, but they were just brainstorming.
I hope that's one of the New York Times crossword puzzles.
Like, what does FC stand for?
Right,
We
exactly.
don't know.
I want to be like Zelda Fitzgerald, but that's not the right one.
No. I don't remember what all of them were, but one distinctly I remember it was fuck computers, and I wanted so badly for that to be correct.
He strikes me as classier than that. I don't think fuck would be his first name, you know?
Yeah, you're right. The name FC stands for Freedom Club. Which is so lame, right? It's such a letdown.
I was trying to think like forgive and compliment. And it stands for what?
Freedom Club.
That's so lame.
I know.
And yet another evidence point as to this is not a group. There was no one to bounce ideas off of.
There would have been one person that would have been like, I think we can do better, guys.
I think that's a great start. And
Yeah.
honestly, Fred, I don't know what his name is, thank you for starting the conversation. I think we can now hear other proposals.
I'm not here to skeet shoot, however.
You know, Fred's like sliding a book over to him, being like, go and read chapter 1. I cannot make him likable. I'm just so disarming.
Oh my god. Okay. June 30th, 1995, so we're still in the same month, same year. Tom Tyler, who's a social psychologist at UC Berkeley, receives the manuscript from FC. No intent or no message to be like, publish this or anything like that. No bomb either, in case you were wondering.
It's just like a 65-page manuscript would have space for a bomb. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Tyler, I guess, had previously commented on one of the recent bombings in a newspaper interview. And so FC reached out to Tom Tyler and asked questions about technology and its effects.
Like, oh, I don't know, I've kind of been like rethinking my position on all of this.
Just wondering
Just kind of
what you
have some
think.
stuff to.
Just like,
The toughest part is like a lot of the worst people in history. Like you read some of their stuff or like their backstory or
Yeah.
whatever, and you're like, God, like a good friend.
Yeah.
You know,
like wow,
like a Michael Malloy.
I would do so much.
Ride or die.
Ride or die,
He would
best
have been
friend.
forgettable, but probably also happier.
True.
It's like, hey, I just kind of want to chat if you got a minute.
Just saying, Michael Malloy could have saved that bar. Anyway, we're referring to episode 1. September 19th, 1995. Several months later, no airline bombing, as he had threatened.
Sure.
The Washington Post and New York Times both split the cost of the publication of the manuscript, and they publish it in the day's Washington Post. And they did this...
What?
Yes, and they did this because the Washington Post was able to distribute a separate section. So it was like not in the Washington Post, but it was still published.
That's nuts. Are you kidding me? Listen, I routinely negotiate with terrorists. Because
By terrorists, he means 14-year-old boys.
who refuse to sit in their assigned seat. And I swear to God, I'm chill, okay? But my job is to teach you. And sometimes, and I'm still this way, I can't make a smart seating choice. And after many warnings and a bit of appeasement, I ultimately then have to move them.
Yeah.
And that's when they say no. And not to be a conservative. But that's when I bring the power of the state on my side. And again, I'm like trying to be chill. I'm like, hey, like, let's try it out today. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
And then if it goes well today, I don't know, maybe we try like the opening activity back in that original seat tomorrow. But if you don't move, the one thing you do not give them in that height of moment
Is what they
is exactly what they want. Exactly. Because that conversation now is validated and will continue.
Yep.
Insane.
Insane behavior.
In the 90s, when Bill Clinton was president, and there's so much to report on, they're like, I think we need to distribute this nationally. Hey guys, we have the book of the summer.
Yes, 65 pages. Oh my god.
I would love if, like, serendipitously, this is what inspires Oprah's book club. Who I think is on air by this point.
Just say it. You gotta know. So the manuscript is now referred to as the Unabomber manifesto. However, the Unabomber would argue with you and say that it's called Industrial Society and Its Future. So I know, dear listeners, you've been wondering, why is the Unabomber a consequence of the Industrial Revolution? And
I have been feeling like it's been a stretch for the last hour. I have been curious.
Here we are. I Googled the Industrial Revolution and its consequences, trying to find what I could possibly do this story on, aside from the 5-day, 40-hour work week. And coincidentally, the first 6 letters, or first 6 words of The Unabomber manifesto is the Industrial Revolution and its consequences.
So to kind of speed run that last little part for you there, dear listener, Maya Googled something, and the top result was the Unabomber's manifesto. And I don't know a lot about algorithms, but I know enough. But I know enough. And I think so does Maya.
Here's the thing. If you'll remember the last episode that I did about people living in the wilderness, we talked about hermits, and the Unabomber is famously a hermit.
You have a degree in chemical engineering, is what I'm also remembering right now. You have a degree in chemical engineering. Your top search result was this man's published book.
Listen, I'm gonna need you to mind your business.
Got really tense here in the studio. As a little bit of red string got broken out and started to tie things together.
I need my lawyer. So anyway, I'm gonna read to you the first point that he makes in his manifesto called The Industrial Society and Its Future. 1. The Industrial Revolution and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race. They have greatly increased the life expectancy of those of us who live in, quote, advanced countries, but they have destabilized society, have made life unfulfilling, and have subjected human beings to indignities, have led to widespread psychological suffering, parentheses, in the third world to physical suffering as well, close parentheses, and have inflicted severe damage on the natural world. The continued development of technology will worsen the situation. It will certainly subject human beings to greater indignities and inflict greater damage on the natural world. It will probably lead to greater social disruption and psychological suffering, and it may lead to increased physical suffering even in the advanced countries.
So the Unabomber and I share some political philosophy. That was shocking to hear.
Right.
Read aloud back to you. I was prepared for one good point. I wasn't prepared for an airtight case.
I know. I think I've read the first half of that, and I was like, oh my
Ooh, yikes.
God. Do I agree?
Maybe it's time for political violence against my enemy.
Listen, I'm not saying I agree with the Unabomber. I am saying he has some valid points.
Listen, much like the Unabomber, I'm going to use this platform to launch my own career as a country music singer. I actually hate that. I was so prepared for him to be absolutely, like, off the wagon.
Yes.
And instead, he is, like, crystal clear in his thinking. Just has a really messed up cause-effect relationship in his brain.
Yeah. That's very disappointing.
Why would you pick genetics professors?
Genetics.
You could blow up a pipeline. You're making bombs.
Wait. What? He's so much more effective.
That's not here to coach anyone on how to do domestic terrorism and or domestic sabotage. But if I'm mad about the state of the world and I can make explosives, then I think I'm going to target the machines that I hate.
And we'll get into why he doesn't in a second.
Maya always does such a good job with these stories. Because she, like, thoroughly researches them.
Because I have ADHD. It is a superpower. Sometimes.
Okay, so after his insanely correct... I get why it was published.
Yeah.
After his insanely correct manifesto, what comes next?
So when they publish this, there's a joint statement that they publish along with it. That they say they published it on the recommendation of the FBI for public safety reasons. The FBI, however, knew that they wanted to publish it for public safety reasons, but also because they were hoping that if it got published, someone would recognize the writing.
Oh.
And that's how they would find the Unabomber.
So they just needed every 8th grade English teacher in the country to
read it.
Okay, cool.
The FBI received well over 50,000 tips on their tip line.
Okay. Kind of cast too wide of a net. Gotcha.
Yeah. February 14th, 1996, so less than a year later, David Kaczynski contacts the FBI with the belief that his brother, Ted Kaczynski may be the Unabomber.
Huge January 6th vibes, if we could just go ahead and say it.
And he tells them this and says point blank that he does not want the reward money. He just genuinely feels that his brother is probably the Unabomber.
I'm not doing this for any kind of notoriety. I don't need anything published. I don't need the money. I just really don't want to have to spend Christmas with my brother. So if you could investigate that, it'd be worth more to me than anything. He has these insane ideas
He keeps calling
around
me
the proletariat.
He keeps calling
He keeps
me,
giving me books.
and he knows I can't read.
Exactly. So when my wife read that manuscript to me, I was like, this is my chance. Okay, so David Hero David.
David Hero David. He then sends the FBI a 23-page essay or something.
Of writers just can absolutely generate some content.
Okay, he sends a 23-page that Ted had written.
Oh,
not that he had written.
He kept it. My brother made me a bedside table in his high school woodshop class, and I still own it. You keep things like that.
Do.
I get it.
You do.
And then eventually you turn him over to the FBI.
So if your brother started making bombs out of things that look like bedside tables.
I have to give a toast at his wedding in 2 months, and while I have a general outline, nothing has been finalized yet. And I think a heartwarming story about the Unabomber, bomber, could really liven up the show.
I think that'd be great.
So if you all look under your seats, please don't uninvite me. I'm really looking forward to it. Mom already got the hotel rooms. Oh, we have really devolved. I got to stop interrupting you. What did David send the FBI?
So he sent the FBI a 23-page essay or something that Ted had written in 1971, and they were able to match the writing style to the manuscript and the letters that he had been sending out. So they confirmed that they think it's they think it's Ted, but they don't have enough evidence. But that is enough evidence to get a search warrant.
Sure. It's like the mid-90s. He's the only person in America not using a semicolon correctly.
True. So April 3rd, 1996, they get a search warrant. They go to Ted's cabin in Montana.
Nice.
Tiny, tiny town in Montana. Lincoln, Montana, it's called.
Famous industrial state, Montana.
Yeah. So they were thinking that the Unabomber has been so meticulous in everything. He's not left a fingerprint. He's not left any hair. He was spotted once and then never again.
Right.
He's been very careful. The return addresses are always also people that he'd be willing to target in case it gets returned to sender. And sometimes he's intentionally targeting people that are returned to sender.
Right.
Right. So they're worried that when they do the search warrant, they're not going to find anything.
Right.
However, if you've ever looked up the inside of the Unabomber cabin, that is a hoarder nest.
Unabomber cabin.
Yeah, inside. It is
our commitment to visual mediums in this audio art form.
We'll start posting them on Instagram.
First, wait. Did they move it to a museum?
It's possible. Yeah, it's very possible.
Love this one of someone. Oh, that's not a selfie. Okay.
Look up.
Yeah. Okay. The best way I can describe it, for those of you who are not looking at my phone right now, if you've ever been on Disney's Splash Mountain, you know the scary part where you're like, why is this actually also a story about miners' safety? That's what this looks like. It's 93 and everything is covered in soot.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So
it doesn't look like he throws anything away.
No. They find everything in that the search warrant is for 24 hours, so they spend all 24 hours just collecting things. They find everything: cans, pipes, batteries, wires, chemicals, all the things you need to make a bomb. They also find a live bomb under his bed, which had been ready to be shipped. They had to call someone in to defuse it. Yep. They also found extensive writings that included a journal that was just written normally about his everyday experiences living out there and his experiences in college.
I have a lot of logistical questions.
Oh, we'll get there.
Okay.
We'll get there.
An incredible amount of logistical questions.
He also had a coded journal, which looks crazy if you ever see it. It is just a grid paper.
Okay.
And every single little grid is filled in with a number.
Okay.
And there's a code for it somewhere, and they decoded it, and that is how he wrote his like descriptions of the crimes and like his thought process behind making the bombs and who he was targeting and his thought process about the effects of the bombs and if he was happy or disappointed with what happened.
I mean, not to coach him on this at all, but definitely sounds like something like a Microsoft Excel could really help with.
Yeah.
Little technology help there.
No, God forbid. God forbid. So they do end up decoding that, and that's how they get him, because that's really... he literally confessed to all of the bombs. And just to give you an idea, Ted, out of all of the tips that they had received, Ted was suspect number 2,416. He was very low priority.
Who was number one?
I know! So...
they got through 2,113 people before they got to him?
2,415 people. Yeah, that's absolutely crazy. So, a little backstory on Ted.
Yeah.
Because this is fascinating.
Where did it go right and then yet also so wrong?
So, Ted was incredibly smart. Just to give you an idea of one of the things he did that really was crazy. He was traveling a lot at the beginning to hand deliver some of these bombs.
Right.
And like ship them from different places. And at one point he was at a train station and he went to the bathroom and collected pubic hair from the bathroom train station because he knew the FBI would be thinking that he would mess up. And so he planted those in one of the bombs. And I don't know if they ever like came across it or anything, because they did mention that there was a lot of misleading clues that he had intentionally left them.
Well, they're like, there was a lot of hair in one of the bombs.
Okay. So almost every clue that he gave the FBI was an intentional misdirection. If it had not been for David Kaczynski, they would not have found this guy.
Okay.
One of the big things the FBI was trying to do, where they were trying to connect people that had relationships to all of the locations that were being targeted.
Okay.
So Chicago, Illinois, with Northwestern and University of Illinois, Chicago. And then UC Berkeley, University of Michigan, and Salt Lake City. University of Utah and BYU.
So the Pac-12. Gotcha.
Exactly. So he was born and raised just outside of Chicago, Illinois. In 1958, he graduated high school 2 years early, and then he went to Harvard on a scholarship at the age of 16.
Okay.
Yep.
Never target his alma mater. Okay.
Whatever. In 1962, after graduating Harvard, he goes to University of Michigan to get a PhD in theoretical mathematics. His friends at the time noticed that he was shy, and then towards the end of his time at Harvard, he really, really became withdrawn. He wasn't just shy, he was like intentionally avoiding talking to people. And Ted would later say that he has been against technology since his last year at Harvard, 1962.
What happened? Like, stuck in an elevator? Like, what happened?
I think he just did a lot of research. I don't know.
I think he saw something the rest of us haven't seen yet. Okay, Maia, calm down. The algorithm knows all.
Okay, 1966, after graduating University of Michigan with his PhD, he begins teaching as an assistant professor at the University of California, Berkeley. Okay. So that connects those guys.
Ure.
There's a quote from him: "Mathematics was just a game, and I wasn't satisfied playing just a game." So, 1969, Ted resigns from his post at Berkeley. The university reached out to him, asking him to stay because he was brilliant.
Sure.
And he, in his journal, was writing that he was laughing about it because he said he only wanted the job so he could save up some money to buy some land and live in the wild.
God, that's like a lot of our friends. It's actually really concerning. A good friend moving to the Maine wilderness. I think technically they're moving to Boston and they're going to be in the Maine wilderness on the weekends, but
that's still a lot.
A lot of people I know are like, all I want to do is never see anyone ever again.
And that's what he did.
Okay, so he leaves in 69.
In 69, so there is a bit of a gap. So 1971, David and Ted buy a 1.4 acre plot of land in Lincoln, Montana.
Okay.
In June of 1978, this is after the very first bomb, Ted moves back to Chicago and he needs some money, so he's working at the factory that his brother works at, and his brother is actually a supervisor in this situation. In July of 1978, a woman at the factory goes on several dates with Ted. And after a few dates, she says she's not romantically interested in him.
Sure.
And asks to be friends, which obviously he's like not super thrilled about. August of 1978, Ted is fired by David for posting.
Do you want to say it or should I?
No, you say.
You, David.
Excellent. I'm so glad we were on the same page. Okay. He's fired by David for posting lewd notes and limericks about the woman that he had gone on dates with that had turned him down, after repeatedly being told to stop by David.
Yeah, like every creep out there has a brother who's like, I'm so sorry.
He's a nice guy, like, once you get to know him.
Listen, like, mom and dad, like, aren't really involved anymore, and it's, like, kind of just, like, me in his life, But here's the thing, too. I mean, obviously not to make light of, like, what an obviously, like, delusional predator he was. You've talked to, like, the people that live in this beautiful city, but who spend all of their time outside, like, either, like, rock climbing or hiking or skiing. Not the world's best conversationalists.
No. And it's said that Ted has never been super social. David recollects at one point in the documentary that he remembers when he was very young, he asked his mom what was wrong with David, or what was wrong with Ted, and his mom was like, nothing. And he was like, he has no friends. And mom told David about Ted after this. Originally, he was a happy baby, but he got sick and was in the hospital for a week, and after this, he had completely shut down. And for some reason, the hospital didn't really allow parents in there, so they don't actually know what happened to him in the hospital. And so the mom, for whatever reason, thinks that this is what caused him to become the way that he was. He, like, didn't make eye contact even as a baby after this situation, and it took several weeks for him to gain enough trust with his parents to even make eye contact.
Do we know how old he was when...
Baby.
Baby?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Like a year.
I just know that, like, I think, like, some signs of, like, specific types of autism start to emerge, like, 2 years into a child's life, and that involves things like not engaging with, like, parents' faces and things like that. Was this dude just, like, on the spectrum and then had a terrible time of it? Doesn't justify the deaths
No,
and
it
the
doesn't,
bombings,
but that would make a lot of
also,
sense.
Yeah.
I don't know how old he was. The pictures that they were showing in relation to this story was of him as, like, a very young toddler, so I would assume between 1 and 2.
Okay, so he's a baby.
He's a baby. And then they also interview a bunch of psychologists and people who study mental disorders, and they say that kids who don't develop a relationship with their mother, primarily boys who don't develop a relationship with their mother, tend to develop psychopathic tendencies as a defense mechanism.
Oh.
And so the mom of David and Ted worries that he felt abandoned as a baby for whatever reason. Anyway, so that's the start of that. And now I need to go back.
And now we're going to start our show.
Okay,
so he obviously gets fired at the factory in Chicago.
Yes.
What
He
happens?
doesn't have good relationships with friends, and he also is not known to have a lot of good relationships with women, and he is considered to be straight by everyone who knew him and by him himself. His brother has very distinct memories of Ted during the short time that he was dating this woman, and he was very excited and very happy and, like, was, like, raving and, like, blushing about how she had kissed him and stuff like that. And it was, I know, it was very cute, but...
Bridgerton. I'm kidding.
In May of 1982, so this is after the Salt Lake City bomb is defused, so this is early in his career as the Unabomber.
Okay.
Ted has moved back to Montana, and then he files papers to remove David as a co-owner of the plot of land that they bought together in Montana.
Okay.
Ted then builds a 10-foot by 12-foot cabin.
It's a shed. It looks a lot like a shed.
Teeny tiny.
I will say this, that's not where I want to be in a Montana winter.
No.
It's very thin. Small enough to be transported to a museum.
Like the whole thing.
Just putting it out there. They kept Lincoln's childhood cabin exactly where it was. Okay, that is not the exact cabin we're talking about.
Yep. He has, like, 2 neighbors. Like, this is a very rural town, and they're not very close to each other, but there's 2 people that remember him when he was there. And they have very distinct memories of Ted showing a lot of aggression towards anyone and everyone who would ruin the nature around him. So, like, loud noises, like, deforestation, that sort of vibe. He vandalized a nearby cabin where some people lived who would ride motorcycles around on a road that was technically closed.
He's so right, but then he's wrong.
The funny thing about the vandalization, what's not funny, is he like didn't go through a window or a door. He took an axe and cut a hole in the wall to get in, smashed everything up, pooped in the tub.
That's such hater energy. I love that so much.
It's like really violent and then really petty.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how I feel like this whole, he was violent.
I know you mean violent is the like cutting his
Yeah.
own door, but that feels a lot more like the petty part.
That's
Because
fair.
any door he broke, they could replace. But they had to patch up a wall. That's so insane. That's a man who has the time.
Genuinely does. So he also sanded a sawmill that belonged to his neighbors in order to put them out of business. Because if you like sand it, it breaks it to a point where they have to
Right.
spend a ton of
Literally
money and
sand
time
in the gears.
to repair it. So he would do that repeatedly until they like
Stopped using the
couldn't
sawmill.
use it. Yeah.
That doesn't get the bomb. That's fascinating to me.
Oh.
The things that do and do not get bombs in this man's world. Okay.
Yes. So neighbors would attest to his strange behavior, and he had peeping Tom tendencies.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, he would like never really come out, but when he would, he looked very dirty and disheveled, unlike our friend the North Pond Hermit, who kept up appearances
Oh, yeah,
for
he
no
was,
reason.
He was using everyone's shower.
It's true. So at one point, he had looked in on someone while they were naked, and I'm not sure if it was intentional or not. It was like his neighbor's girlfriend at the time. But the real reason he came over to that house was to ask what day of the week it was.
That's how we started this podcast, Maya. I don't know what day it was. I have no intention of blowing up anything.
Yeah.
Except your phone this summer. I'm kidding.
If you're Grant's
It's
type.
dry right now. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I'm going to go do a solo hike in Utah for 2 days. I don't know if I told you that or not.
Tracks.
It's fine.
In the throes of
Mental health crisis. I just never been to Canyonlands, so.
Yeah, well, that sounds fun. I
Yeah.
hope. Yeah, send pictures.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Cool.
So he was noted as being dirty and ungroomed, would not emerge from his land for a long time, would come and ask what day and year it was, and would otherwise intentionally...
What day and year?
Yes.
So this man didn't intentionally take 6 years off. He just got really into other projects. And I was like, what? Oh, right. Phew, they're going to forget about me if I blow
shit,
something
it's been
up
6
soon.
years.
Oh my God.
Time flies.
Time flies when you're cutting into your neighbors' cabins and then staring at their girlfriends.
Okay, so the reason that the FBI couldn't identify him early on, and I mentioned this, that all of the things that he was using were very random.
Right.
So apparently in this area, it's not uncommon for people to have their own kind of junkyards
Yeah,
of
of
like
course.
power tools and
Right.
broken cars and stuff. And so he was stealing parts from everyone else's
Right.
kind of junkyards. And at one point, one of the daughters was interviewed in the documentary, and she says she remembers waking up in the middle of the night hearing rummaging outside.
Ooh, hate that.
Yeah, and she went over to her mom and dad, and they both were like, "Oh, you're dreaming. You're fine." And then later realized that it was the Unabomber.
Man was looking for bomb supplies.
Yeah, exactly. And no one ever noticed because it's their like junkyard. And then the other neighbor reported that a UPS driver was coming by to make a delivery, and the UPS driver told him later that he saw someone in his like shed using the drill press while he was out.
Oh.
And so he was using other people's power tools too. Which is dedication.
Yeah, because you got to get some like practice on those machines before you can really
And you
turn it
also like
product.
have to know when people are not going to be there, which is crazy to me.
Sounds like he had a lot of time to observe on his hands.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. In reading his journals and coded entries, investigators discovered that he had severe depression
Oh.
and psychopathic tendencies.
The only things that didn't make him happy? Wow.
Crazy. So unfortunately, he had reached out for help on multiple occasions and didn't ever really receive the help that he needed, but he was also kind of unwilling to admit that he needed help, so it was hard for him to like make that connection.
I have too many similarities with the Unabomber.
And he's very critical of the FBI and calls them incompetent all the time.
I mean, again, maybe more right than wrong on that one.
Yeah, like, man, I can't disagree.
I certainly think they are trying their best.
Exactly.
Sometimes.
Yeah. This case caused them to like revamp how they look at terrorist cases.
Sure.
I didn't really do a ton of digging into like how they changed their investigation tactics, but it did cause them to make some significant change because the media was pissed at them. He had a lot of trouble socializing, and especially trouble socializing with the opposite sex, which led him to feelings of violence. And so in cases of serial killers who also have psychopathic tendencies, that will result into violence towards the opposite sex or like whoever they're sexually interested in. However, Ted had an IQ, I cannot remember what it was. I think it was 187.
Oh, wow.
He was a genius,
Yeah.
like by all standards. And so I think he was able to think through enough of his trauma that he wanted to take out his violent tendencies on psychologists.
So he did his work and he was like, others must suffer.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly, basically.
Yikes.
So he had said some derogatory things about women he had come across in his journal. He just couldn't make any relationships with them. He had some feelings of wanting to have a sex change to be a woman.
Oh.
But people like the psychologists and behavioral specialists that have looked at his case and talked to him have said that he wasn't experiencing gender dysphoria. He was just like so unable to make connections with the opposite sex that he thought the only way to like make that connection was to have a sex change.
So desperate to make a connection with women that he was willing to become a woman if that was would make it easier.
Yes, exactly.
Interesting.
And he had tried to reach out. I think he wrote a letter to some therapist while he was in his cabin in Montana, I think in between some of the bombings. But he also, while he was at Michigan State, had reached out to a psychiatrist and like actually gone in for the appointment, but he found himself unable to talk about his problems. And after that, started writing in his journal about how he was having feelings of violence towards the psychiatrist or psychologist. And he said later that leaving that appointment would be a turning point for him because that's when he decided, quote, "I will kill, but I will try to avoid detection so that I can kill again."
Jesus, that is not the lesson to take from therapy.
No, exactly. Well, that's the thing. He never went to therapy. So these thoughts were not shared with anyone outside of his journal. So it made it very difficult for people to be able to suspect him as a violent individual because not even his family, his closer friends, his brother knew anything about this because he was so tight-lipped. So this is his quote about his time at Michigan. He said, "During my years at Michigan, I occasionally ended up having dreams. Some psychologist would either be trying to convince me that I was sick or would be trying to control my mind. I would grow angrier and finally I would break out in physical violence. At the moment when I killed the psychologist, I experienced a great feeling of relief and liberation." And so he kind of took this and combined it with his general feeling of like hatred about destroying the planet and industrial revolution and that kind of stuff.
And its consequences.
Exactly. About, because he had read somewhere that like they're trying to be able to download the mind and like do all of that kind of stuff. And that was something that he really did not believe with on a moral level. And so I think he combined that with his feelings of hatred towards members of like scientific community. One of his quotes, "I think that perhaps I could now kill someone. I emphasize that my motivation is personal revenge. My ambition is to kill a scientist, big businessman, government official, or the like."
Well, check and check and check. All three of those.
He at least hurt them.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the beginning, he was very frustrated. In his journal, he was writing things like, "Frustrating, I can't seem to make a lethal bomb. The FBI is incredibly incompetent."
But yet, I can't make a lethal bomb.
I can't make a lethal bomb. Oh, after the Ice Brothers incident, which was before he had committed murder, but one of the first serious injuries, he said, "I feel better. I'm still plenty angry, but now I'm able to strike back."
So, the title of the episode is The Industrial Revolution and Its Consequences.
Yes.
But the content of the episode is, we haven't fixed any of these issues and they've been around forever. So, like, a lack of mental health support, like an environment that doesn't allow men to, like, talk openly about their, like, sadness or their, like, want of intimacy, like a cultural view that, like, violence justifies things.
Yeah. Here's one of his quotes from the second bomb. So another one of the minor cuts and burns. He said, I had hoped the victim would be blinded or have his hands blown off or be otherwise maimed. Well, live and learn. I wish I could get a hold of some dynamite.
Wow. So he just really, at times, finds an incredible balance in himself.
Yeah.
As he commits these random acts of
Like,
terror.
and the hard thing, too, is that he recognizes it in himself,
Yeah.
too, because he's like, this is weird for me to be thinking this, but, like, it's causing me to feel some relief.
It's like his brilliant mind that like made him really like able to like see what was it? Theoretical math was his PhD in?
Yeah.
Was such an asset there. And
Yeah.
obviously it's not like one with the other, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
this is how it turned out, but it's like his brain worked differently and his brain worked differently.
And it's also really good that he wasn't smart in chemistry,
Right.
because this would have all gotten very serious very quick.
And also maybe a little bit, thank goodness he was a hermit and not a person more dialed into society if he's like kind of losing track of time up there.
Yeah,
because that also means
exactly.
he's probably like slipping into bouts of like psychosis and mania where like he completely loses track of some of the stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
This is, I mean,
I learned so much. I didn't know, like I knew about the Unabomber and I knew that he was a hermit.
I knew it's not Unabomber anymore. So
Unabomber.
huge one there, Unabomber. And like, not that the guy was right by any means, but that it wasn't necessarily just completely random violence.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, but with as much context as you can have around random violence.
And he took it out on not women, which is unusual for a serial criminal.
Right.
That has psychotic tendencies.
And is mad at women.
Yeah, but he I feel like he recognized that violence was not directed at women. It was directed at something wrong in his head. And he was taking it out on scientists.
Yeah.
But was also like not just taking it out on like random scientists, like taking it out on like that executive that helped ExxonMobil and like that kind of stuff, which is crazy to me that like, because if I were in a state of psychopathy, I don't think I would have that.
So do they execute him? Does he live forever in prison? What's the final chapter?
Thing. If I remember correct, he got jail or prison without the possibility of parole.
Sure.
And so I think he's just chilling in prison.
Interesting.
Yeah. From what I have read, I think he's like, I actually don't know how old he is.
I mean, but like for a person who
78,
liked his privacy and nature, to be just completely deprived of either of those
Sucks.
is, and like maybe a very specific punishment.
But maybe he's also getting the help that he finds, like because he's probably forced to get kind of that mental health.
The prison system is famous for helping people with mental health issues.
That's true. You're right. Yeah, you're right. They're really good at that.
Well,
super great.
Now I feel like I can't do Titanic, which is what the plan had been. So I'll
You
have to come
can
up with something else.
absolutely do the Titanic. I love that.
Am I the asshole for wanting to do the Titanic? That's going to be episode 9.
Vote on your phones now.
Vote on your phones. Donate to the Patreon account.
Yes, we're gonna set up a Patreon account. It may or may not be up by the time this episode comes out. The account is set up. It's Well I Laughed podcast. If you have a theme recommendation, please email us. We're wellilaughdpod@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram, Well I Laughed.
And very soon
TikTok.
we will be unveiling the TikTok because we have some fun video too.
We do have some fun videos. So we laughed at the beginning.
I think I kind of laughed throughout, but maybe more as a coping mechanism.
I laughed a lot during the time where he was sending letters to...
Yes! The funniest part about all of this was that there's now a new way to get my book published.
Just vague threats. Yep.
I can't ever throw away Griffin's desk.
Nope.
Side table.
Griffin, you did a good job with
If
the
you're
desk.
listening to this, I knew you didn't work as hard as me. I'm kidding. Well, good. That was a good chuckle to end. Well, I laughed. Maya, did you laugh?
I laughed too.
Amazing.
Okay,
Thanks, y'all.
bye.